Okay, so here you can see we have our Union Armor Guard primed up and ready to go. I primed him up with Gray Seer. So to start things out, we are going to paint his actual uniform with the contrast color Gilliman Blue. Alright, now we're going to start out by painting his pants. Obviously, we're going to be getting all of the cloth areas with this color. If you end up getting any of the contrast paint on a different portion that you weren't expecting, you can always cover it up with Gray Seer or Wraithbone. You can see we're also going to get his jacket there as well. We're going to do our best to avoid getting any paint on the leather straps or the holster there, or any of the armor plates. We're going to be getting that with a different color coming up here pretty soon. So right now just focus on getting as much of the blue as you can. Alright, and there we go. We now have all of the cloth material base coated and shaded. So now we are ready to move on to the next step, which is going to be painting all of the steel metallic areas in a non-metallic metal kind of scheme with contrast paint Basilicanum Gray. We're going to be hitting a couple of different areas in this particular one, mostly the armored boots, the armor plate on the chest, the handguards as well, and his great big GW style pauldrons. Now for this, again, you want to make sure that you don't get any on the leather straps, as we're going to be painting those separately. If you do, you can go ahead and cover that up with Gray Seer or Wraithbone. With this, you also want to make sure that it doesn't pool up very much on any of the long flat areas like the blade, because it will leave tide marks, and it will leave tide marks fairly quickly. So be thorough, but be quick, and we will be back once this step is done. Alright, and here you can see all of the metallic areas are done. They are colored and shaded automatically, which is very nice. Again, make sure you pay attention when you're doing long flat areas like the blade there. So for now, we're going to go ahead and move on to painting all of the leather straps. And for that, we're going to be using the very useful contrast paint Snakebite Leather. Now here we're going to be hitting up all of the various leather straps and on the front and back, as well as the holster on the side there. And you'll see this stuff looks very good after just one even very thin coat, which I did here. I did end up going back and making it a little bit darker, but even so you still get a very nice leather color with just a little bit of effort. So we'll see how it looks once we get this done. Alright, there we go. We have all of the leather straps completed, and you can see the model is definitely starting to come together. So for now, we are going to work on the brass bits, and for that we're going to use Gorgrenta Fur. We'll be doing the same non-metallic metal style effect. It's very quick and very easy. I highly recommend using a detail brush for this. So for this portion, we're just going to be painting the two buckles on the front, right there on his belt and on his chest. We are also going to be getting the sword hilt at the top and a small bit of brass on his back. Alright, and there we go. All of the brass is completed. When you're doing this, make sure that you don't overload your brush, because the contrast paint can flood a lot of the details very quickly. So next up, we're going to go ahead and move on to painting all of the exposed flesh, which is mostly his fingertips and his face. And for that, we are going to be using Gilliman Flesh. It acts a lot like your regular flesh washes. For this, we're not going to be too concerned about the beard or the face, because we're going to be painting that in a darker color for this one anyway. And I apologize, it's not quite that clear getting his fingertips there. You are going to make sure you want to get the inside of his palms though. is that will definitely stand out when you're once you're done. Like I said, we're also going to go ahead and get his face. I'm not going to be too concerned about the regular hair or the beard because we're going to be covering that up with a darker color here very shortly. Okay, and here we are with the skin fully painted and ready to go. You can see we're almost towards the end. We just have a couple more spots to hit up. Next up, we are going to go ahead and paint up the rest of his cover there with a bit of Black Templar. If you're using this for the regular Union hands, I'd also recommend using Black Templar for the shoes as well. For this guy, though, since he has the big armored boots, that's not really necessary. I apologize for the janky camera angle there, but this is a little bit trickier than I remember the last time. Anyway, we're just going to get a very small amount onto the bill of the hat there and follow around the rest of the hat with the black as well. Alright, and here we are, ready to go for the hair and the beard. And for this, we are going to be using Wildwood. It's a very dark brown, so the fact that we already have the Gilliman flesh over the hair really isn't going to make that much of a difference. If you did want a lighter color, though, I would highly recommend going over the hair with either Gray Seer or Wraithbone first before applying any of the lighter ones. Otherwise, it may blend in with the skin a bit too much. Okay, finishing things up for the base, we are going to be using Cygor Brown. I highly recommend, if you're doing the sand base, to thin it down with a 1-to-1 mixture of your contrast paint and the contrast medium as well, just to help it flow. Otherwise, it'll go on really thick and it won't settle down properly. Alright, and there we go. We have the Union Armored Guard fully completed. As far as the basing went, I put on some Autumn Flock and a little Autumnal Tuft as well, just to provide a bit of a color contrast between all of the blue that Union forces generally tend to have. Final verdict on doing contrast paints as a whole. They're a great way to save time. I got this guy painted up from just primed to this state here in a little over an hour. So for armies that have lots of hands or lots of very similar units, like the Union or the Golden Army, for example, it can definitely be a massive time saver. Would I do it for smaller posses that have mostly faces and hands and whatnot? Probably not just by itself. I will use the contrast paints as a quick way to get base coats down and some additional shading. I'll use contrast paints for getting down base coats and some quick shading, but as far as highlighting, I will stick with my regular method, and I will most likely not be using the non-metallic method here for more important units like bosses, faces, support options. It's a really great time saver. It's not quite the miracle in a bottle that GW has been claiming, but I can definitely see a use for it in the future. So that's going to go ahead and do it for me today. Stick around, guys. I got plenty more content on the way. I'm just about set on how I want to do battle reports, so we should be seeing one of those here in the very near future. Alright, take care, guys.